last week, we posted our in-depth review of Dell's behemoth of a monitor, the 52-inch UltraSharp. And even though we did answer some of your questions in that video, thousands of you came out to watch and ask even more questions about that monitor. And some quite rightly pointed out a few bits, even some quite important bits that we actually missed in the first review. So here is that video where we right the wrongs and answer all of those remaining questions on the 52-inch Dell UltraSharp Thunderbolt monitor that I'm, yes, still using each and every single day as my main monitor. Now, as before, if you happen to be about to buy one of these screens, do consider using the link down below in this video description. It costs you absolutely nothing and does help to support this channel in so many ways so that we can continue making more videos like these. Also consider subscribing because apparently me asking helps people subscribe, so please do consider that if you will. Now, starting with question 1, which came from a number of different people. Can you use the Thunderbolt port to daisy chain to other Thunderbolt devices? Now, this is really stupid that we didn't test this in the first video, since this is one of the features that they actually advertise. After all, the sales page for the 52-inch Dell UltraSharp monitor states that it works seamlessly with devices on Mac, and daisy chaining multiple displays via a single cable requires Thunderbolt connectivity. So, some people rightly pointed out that you should be able to daisy chain another monitor off the back of this monitor, right? Right? No. Asterisk. Now, I think this actually comes from some bad design on Dell's website because it's one of those situations where they have the same sales page for multiple different variations of like the same products, even though in this case, those variations all have different features. So whilst there are upstream USB ports on the back of this monitor, none of them support video. So there is no way to daisy chain other Thunderbolt screens off the back of this one. Now, the only way you can do some form of daisy chaining is if this monitor is on the end of the chain, in which case it's not really supporting daisy chaining. But taking the 40-inch Dell Thunderbolt monitor, which does have both an upstream and a downstream Thunderbolt port on the back, strangely a feature that was removed from this 52-inch Dell monitor, you can then hook up a computer to the 40-inch screen and then daisy chain to the 52-inch Dell monitor from that. However, this has another issue, as depending on the type of machine you are trying to use, you may then start to hit some limitations. And Apple in particular, I'm going to talk about here. So my M4 MacBook Air, for example, just doesn't support any more than one display at those resolutions. M3 Max MacBook Pro, and it gets full resolution 120Hz on the 40-inch, and also full resolution, but only 60Hz on the 52-inch display. And no matter what we tried running both screens at lower resolutions and lower refresh rates, we just couldn't get that 52-inch Dell to run at 120 Hz. But when we tried using an M4 Pro MacBook Pro, that also only outputted to a single screen, even though it's a newer machine. Now, this is now both on my M4 MacBook Air and the M4 Pro MacBook Pro. If you go into the Thunderbolt system information pages, you can actually clearly see that the Macs see both screens, like right down to their firmware versions. Apple just seems to be very harshly limiting the capabilities here, because even if you drop, again, the resolution and the refresh rate of one monitor, which should then open up, more room, more bandwidth to push video to a second display, it just doesn't, because, well, all Apple sees is, oh, there's a second display. I'm only an M4 Pro chip or an M4 chip, and I'm not allowed to use a second display, even though there is plenty of bandwidth available. Now, over on the Windows side of things, we hooked up an Asus ZenBook Duo that we reviewed recently, and we are getting full native resolution on the laptop, full native resolution on all the screens, and at their full 120Hz refresh rates, including the laptop screen. And also, let's, out of interest, wonder if we can get 4 screens. Oh, okay, so that's the limit. So you can't use the bottom screen on the ZenBook Duo itself, which then didn't work whilst we had the 2 external monitors connected. Now, question 2 is, isn't the lack of MST support an Apple issue, not a Dell issue? Now, yes, this is very much so, but when Dell advertised this monitor as fully compatible with Mac, it's kind of a little bit misleading, but let's talk about this a little bit more, as honestly, I didn't really cover this in the first video. So MST stands for DisplayPort Multi-Stream Transport, which basically gives someone the ability to display multiple monitors over a single cable. And Apple doesn't implement this standard when everyone else does, which again is pretty bad on Apple's part. Now, the only workaround to this is going back to kind of the age-old trick of connecting multiple inputs to then trick the Mac into thinking that two displays are connected. You know, like connecting the Mac to Thunderbolt and then also connecting the Mac to my CalDigit dock that then has DisplayPort from the dock to the screen. And then you'd have to use the standard like picture-by-picture modes to configure, you know, whichever appropriate 50x50 or 25x75, whichever window sizes you wanted to use. Question number 3, a few people are asking about the webcam and asking what it's like having the webcam at the top of the monitor and being in a video call. So the webcam itself is an Insta360 Link 2, but I'm going to stick this at the bottom of my screen now, as otherwise... Question number 4, does this model suffer the electrical noise issue from the 40-inch? Now, generally, I've never noticed any electrical noise from the 40-inch. It's the same with the 52-inch, but again, this is just me. There are just so many variables when it comes to electrical noise, like how clean your power is. So just your results may vary, but there is no electrical coil whine or any noticeable noises that come from this screen that I can hear. The only thing I could find when searching if anyone else had this issue with this model or the older 40-inch model was a post referring to a much older Dell screen and then not the 40 or 52-inch models. And question number 5, what about ghosting? It's been the main complaint whilst gaming on all the other Dell models. So interesting one. We ran the UFO test across the 52 and 40-inch Dells on both their fast and normal response times, as well as the Samsung 57-inch and also the LG 45-inch UltraGear OLED, just to compare. Now, as far as the fast and the normal modes go on both Dells, they are roughly the same, in which to say they're both pretty bad still. Now, if you compare this to the Samsung 57-inch, which you can see here, whilst it still has some minor ghosting, it's still visible, but much better. And now compare that to the LG 45-inch UltraGear, and it's just a clear night and day difference. The image is so much clearer, so much sharper, and if you look at those small dots across the top, it captures all of those perfectly. Samsung also was pretty cool here, whereas on the Dells, it's just a pretty horrendous mess. So in summary, ghosting is just as bad on the Dell 52 as the 40. It's better on Samsung and almost perfect on the LG OLED. Now, question number 6, what if I have two Macs? Can I connect them both and use them in split view at the same time? So yes, you can connect one via Thunderbolt, one via DisplayPort or via HDMI. Now, if you don't have that, you can actually buy a USB-C to DisplayPort cable or HDMI to make use of one of those Thunderbolt ports or HDMI ports on the back instead. If you are not sure which cable to buy, I will again link down to the one that I've bought from Amazon down below, just because I had a bad run of buying some cables that didn't really work properly. I had a few weird issues. So again, feel free to use that one if you want to do the same. Question number 7, what is the desk chair that you're using? So this is the Herman Miller Embody. Honestly, legit, it is the best chair I've ever sat in. We also do have a Secret Lab chair, which is great, but I just find the Herman Miller much more comfortable. Now, it doesn't have adjustable lumbar supports, but just the natural design and shape and curve of the chair does give you, I would call it, exceptional lumbar supports. And I've had this for now, I think 5 years or so. And I know so many people that have this as one of their products they buy once in their life and they never have to buy them again. They are just absolutely rock solid as far as chairs go. Question number 8, do you have the same screen partitioner options on the 40-inch Dell? Now, yes, you do have the same partitioning on the 40-inch model, but there are a lot less options to choose from, with the 75% and 25% option not quite being 16:9, but you would get pretty close to where you want to be. Question number 9 is, why do you get a Shuko power cable when we're in the UK, obviously? Now, Dell actually sent both the Shuko and the UK power cable. Yeah, it's a little bit wasteful, but also not uncommon. It's actually quite a lot easier to include the hybrid Shuko cable that works across most of Europe, and then just for the ones that get sent to the UK, then just, open box, chuck a UK cable in and you're done. Now, question 10, will a 3090 be able to support 6K at 120? Again, looking at the specs, it says it will support 6K at 120, which as long as you're not gaming, which you say here, then I think you're going to be fine, because pushing 6K at 120 on a 3090 is probably not going to end very, very well. You're going to have to, downgrade all your graphics settings to get any form of FPS that you can. Question number 11, how would this monitor be on Linux? Now, we don't yet have a Linux machine here to test, but there is no Dell display software available for Linux aside from a firmware update. Side quest, is it Linux or Linux? Comment down below. We'll find out. But features such as screen partitioning, those should still work. That's definitely something that we're going to look into, again, for improving in the future, but that's going to be something done at the driver level on Linux, which should work. So again, we're actually going to install Linux on one of the spare laptops we have here. So if that's ready in time, I will throw a clip in here, or I will add it to the description down below of how that went if we're too late. Now, question number 12, how does it compare to the LG 45-inch UltraGear? Now, it is pretty close. It's similar to the 57-inch G9. It just depends on your priorities here. The 45-inch LG is much nicer, it's, being an OLED, but I just like the additional size, the resolution of the Dell, the built-in Thunderbolt dock is great, plus those KVM switching features. It's just a shame that it just doesn't have that same curve as the 45-inch LG, because that is pretty spot on. So I would say if you prefer OLED over IPS and you gain more than you work, the LG might still be the better option for you here. Question 14, if all things were equal, would you prefer the height of the Dell or width of the 57-inch Samsung? So if the 57-inch Samsung had IPS black and Thunderbolt, I would definitely go for the 57-inch version. It has the better curve. I personally prefer having the width over the height, but then again, I have been using that 57-inch screen for over 2 years now, so it is kind of taking me time still to adjust and find space for that extra vertical space that I have on this 52. But ultimately, give me an OLED with 0.03 millisecond response time and curved and 50-something inches, and I'm there. Question number 15. I have 3 Apple Studio displays. Your comments on not matching Retina PPI made me think twice. What are your thoughts? So Apple Studio displays, very, very good, but there are just so many better options out there nowadays. It's just a very difficult question to answer, since it depends on your needs and your budgets and what you're using them for. But you also mentioned light sensitivity, where lots of the newer OLEDs have the specific eye care features, which you want to look out for. But that aside, I would just say a single screen is so much nicer to use. It's just more compact on the desk, less messy cabling, since it's just one screen, one power cable. So to me, it's just a no-brainer. I cannot go back to multiple separate displays now with bezels down the middle. It's just so much nicer having one seamless and continuous ultra-wide screen. Question 16. Between the 57-inch Samsung and the 52-inch Dell, which is better for content creation? So I would say for content creation and editing, I would say the 57-inch Samsung has been out for over 2 years, and you can actually get some really, really good deals on them right now. Just be aware that Samsung customer support isn't the best. And if you have a workaround for expanding the ports, like a cow digit docking station, then absolutely go for the 57-inch model instead. Question 17, did you attach the monitor arm to the desk riser? So yes, I've had the heavy duty Secret Lab monitor arm mounted on my desk riser for about 2 years again, and I don't think the desk is bowed or anything that I can see to my eyes. Now, at some point, I did recall the instructions saying not to attach the monitor arm to the riser, but if that was the case, it's not there now, and those arms also do fit well onto other desks, except we have one desk here that has this really thick worktop that's like 40 millimeters thick, which the Secret Lab monitor arms won't fit onto because it's too thick to go onto. Question number 18. How does it compare to OLED? Now, again, it's all just a trade-off. I love the OLED picture quality, especially when gaming, but for productivity, I don't really notice it, since, you're just getting on with your emails or browsing or whatever. When you watch content or game, that's when you notice it. And that's when I generally switch over to my LG G5 OLED TV for gaming, for watching TV shows, all that good stuff. Question 19. If I have 2 other 24-inch side monitors, do you recommend this, or the 40-inch, or maybe the LG 39-inch that's coming out soon? So you could just about add 2 24-inch side monitors, but you would need a truckload of desk space to fit that on. For reference, here is a 32-inch monitor, just so you can see how much space they take up. Again, we did it here. Maybe if you add them in portrait mode, then that could actually work quite well. But again, no real space for anything else, like my speakers would have to go at that point. So if you did want to do this, I would definitely suggest either the 40-inch Dell, or potentially the 39-inch LG with the 24s either side. Again, just make sure you have enough cables, enough inputs, and make sure your PC can, of course, drive those 3 displays. Question 20, a question now about the wallpaper we used in the last video. So sure, shout out to Matt on the team for putting this wallpaper together. We thought we'd just try and see if there was any interest without ever mentioning it in the video, and we got a few sales. So if you are interested, you think you like it, it is listed down below this video, and I think probably all the other videos on the channel as well. Now, just to clarify, at the moment, it is just a static wallpaper. We're still trying to figure out getting the whole animated part working reliably, so just don't buy it if you want the animated part. But if you want to support the channel, you like the wallpaper, awesome. And there will be, I think, more to come. we'll see. Now, question number 21, how deep is your desk? So this is a Secret Lab desk that is 31.5 inches deep. My face is like 1 to 2 feet away when I'm kind of using it. Just generally huge fan of Secret Lab desks and the desk mats. Again, I'll link down below. I'll also link to that heavy duty monitor arm that I'm using here as well. Question number 22, why don't you just connect your gaming PC to the 2.5 gig Ethernet? Now, yes, ideally, you'd want to just connect the 2.5 gig directly to your device. But if your device doesn't have 2.5 gig, then this is a nice way to get it via using it as like a dock. Again, yes, of course, I would hardwire my PC to the 2.5 gig connection. But for the video, we had to just point out that if you do this and then you switch the KVM, then that network port moves with it along with all the other USB devices and essentially disconnects it from your other device. Also, whilst we're here, whilst 2.5 gig is great, just don't forget that the rest of your network will need to support those 2.5 gig speeds. Again, quick shout out to both the video we posted on upgrading my home to a 10 gig network and also the buyer's guide video we will be working on very soon to show exactly how to do this and install this in your own home. Question number 23, if auto KVM doesn't work on a Mac, can I do it with either a keyboard shortcut or via buttons on the monitor? Okay, so we didn't really dig into this much in the previous video, but we spent a ton of time figuring this one out today. So we did get Dell's Display Manager software to work on one out of the 2 Macs that we've got here. It's still broken on mine for some reason. And generally speaking, you install the Dell Display Manager software onto just all the devices that you're connecting in. Then you enable the KVM via USB features. You tell it which USB-C uplink port to use, and that's basically that. Now, the only problem with this is that number one, it's quite slow. It actually took around 5 seconds or so to actually move all the devices over to each machine. And in our testing, there's a bit of a weird bug that can actually make it quite unusable. As you can see here, we click on the start menu button and start typing something in, and just the monitor decides to swap USB inputs to the other device, and then it kind of stops everything, even though the mouse is nowhere near that correct edge of the screen to make it switch. So something weird's going on here. The same thing happened again for us on multiple Windows devices as well. But ultimately, it was slow, clunky, janky, all other sorts of words for it just doesn't really work very well, and certainly not very smoothly. However, if you use the KVM via network, that did work flawlessly. Keyboard, mouse switching was seamless and basically instantaneous. You can also drag and drop files and folders and things across devices, which is pretty awesome. And just overall, if you have 2, 3, or even 4 devices hooked up and sharing one keyboard, one mouse, then definitely go the network via KVM option, as that just works, whereas the USB option just slow, clunky, and doesn't really work properly. Question 24. For productivity only, if you had to choose between the 40-inch and the 52-inch, what would you get? 52-inch, no question. Question 25. Now, the official specs, this is an interesting one. The official specs for the M3 Pro and the M4 say it can only do 60 Hz on 6K, but your Macs could do 120 Hz. What gives? So this is kind of going back to the first question in this video about multiple monitor supports. So it just depends on the chip you have and whether you have the Pro or the Max. Apple does pretty significantly limit the capabilities here. I haven't yet found a full list of all available resolutions and refresh rates supported by all the Mac models. And even Apple's own documentation is super bad here. It basically tells you, hey, this is the chip that you have, and here are a couple of examples of the resolutions and refresh rates it can do. For example, the M3 Max MacBook Pro that we have here, according to Apple's documentation, supports only 6144 by 3456 at 60 Hz over Thunderbolt, when we are getting 6144 by 2560, so less than they state, but we get 120 Hz over Thunderbolt. But then if you want to use HDMI, you could get up to 8K at 60 Hz or 4K at 240 Hz. Then if we take my base M4 MacBook Air for another example, so it is capable of exactly the same as our M4 Pro MacBook Pro, which is odd when you think about it, a Pro machine versus a MacBook Air. And both of these officially supports 8K at 60 or 4K at 240 Hz over Thunderbolt or HDMI, which then means the Dell's 52-inch resolution and refresh rate kind of sits somewhere in the middle of that. And I know it's just stupid. It would be nice if Apple just published a list of, all supported resolutions and refresh rates, but they don't because, well, Apple. Question number 26. Can you make a video with the 57-inch monitor above the 52-inch monitor? Now, I genuinely have no idea how you would mount both of these monitors to your desk, but hey, just for fun, here is me holding the 57-inch Samsung monitor above the 52-inch Dell monitor, just so you can see what they might look like, and just Godspeed to anybody who manages to mount both of these to your desk at the same time. Now, the other question I saw a few times was just go buy a TV, because you're right, at £2,500, $3,000, 4,000 Canadian, this is a freakishly expensive IPS monitor. So we're going to do just that. We tried it before a couple of years ago, but this time I want to try an 8K TV instead, even though they've essentially been end of life. So make sure you subscribe to see how that works. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I do hope that answered as many of your questions as possible. Maybe go watch the first full review video right here if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye-bye. Also, one feature I'm thankful this screen doesn't have in it is AI. Leave that for Claude or Gemini or whichever you prefer, because AI can be super helpful with other tasks like research and writing, and that's where Merlin AI comes in. Instead of using multiple tools, Merlin AI brings the best AI models together in one place. ChatGPT for writing, Claude for reasoning, and Gemini for research. You get the right model for the right task, all inside a single platform while saving a lot of money. They actually gave us a 75% discount code, which we will share with you in just a second. Now, you might already be using AI to rewrite emails or to figure out what it really means when your ex texts you at 1 a.m, but Merlin goes beyond that. In our work, it helps us with research, summarizing spec sheets, and pulling reference images in one click. And once installed, it's like a competent assistant in your browser. So if you want to try Merlin AI, you can get a huge discount right now. While other AI tools charge around about $20 per month for just one model, Merlin AI gives access to all major ones for only $5 per month. Now, they can do this because they purchase API credits in bulk from all the top LLM providers. So click on the link in the description below and use our code PETE5 at checkout, or scan the QR code.